Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome and thank you for dialing into this webinar, which is to launch our toolkit for child rights actors on engaging the Committee on the Rights of the Child, developed by the Institute on Statelessness and Inclusion with the support of UNICEF. My name is Denisha Moss, and I lead the children's program at the Institute on Statelessness and Inclusion, and I'm pleased to serve as your moderator for today's webinar. At ISI, we are committed to the continued development of learning resources that help to build knowledge and understanding on the child's right to nationality and the protection of stateless children. In today's webinar, we'll be sharing how you, as child rights actors working on diverse children's rights issues, can use this toolkit together with ISI's database on statelessness and human rights to advance your goals related to protecting children's rights. We will also be unveiling a newly developed fact sheet, which illustrates how the committee has been increasingly engaging on nationality and statelessness issues. Today, our lineup includes 3 presenters. Our first presenter is Vera Karanika, ISI's Education and Program Officer, who will provide an overview of the different components included in the toolkit, how the database can be used as a starting point to help identify key nationality and statelessness issues affecting children, and how utilizing those resources together can facilitate making submissions to the committee. Vera will also present on our new fact sheet, which covers CRC committee engagement. You will then hear from Jenna Almushahidi, who is the founder of the Swedish organization Against Statelessness, and she will speak about her organization's experience reporting to the committee and how that engagement has contributed to positive developments on the ground. Following Jenna's presentation, you'll hear from Thandeka Chauke. She's the Statelessness Project Head at the South Africa-based Lawyers for Human Rights, and she will be speaking about her organization's experience engaging the committee in conjunction with litigation and how recommendations from the committee were instrumental in achieving concrete impacts at a national level. Following these presentations, we will switch gears a little bit and zoom out from the more practical aspects of engaging the committee to look at how the landscape on childhood statelessness has been evolving since the launch of the Coalition on Every Child's Right to Nationality. And presenting on that topic will be Monica Sandvik, Senior Statelessness Coordinator and Head of the Statelessness Unit, section at UNHCR, and she will share reflections on the progress and key developments of the campaign. In order to manage time efficiently, we will be sharing the bios of all of our presenters in the chat function. And if you are interested in contacting them further for advice or questions, that would be an option available to you. We hope that by the end of this webinar, you will be familiar on how to use ISI's database to identify key nationality and statelessness issues affecting different groups of children that you work with, and then be able to confidently utilize the tools provided in the kit to help draft submissions to the Committee on the Rights of the Child. With that, we have a special guest with us today who has agreed to deliver opening remarks. And so it is my pleasure to give the floor to the esteemed chair of the Committee on the Rights of the Child, Ms. Mikiko Otani. Mikiko, over to you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to congratulate the Institute on Statelessness and Inclusion and UNICEF on the publication and launch of the Toolkit for the Child Rights Actors on engaging with the CRC to promote the child right to a nationality, and thank them for inviting me to speak at the online launch event today, as the toolkit is very relevant and valuable for the work of the committee. As the chair of the Committee on the Rights of the Child, I'd like to express deep appreciation for the significant contribution they made by developing this toolkit. At the outset, I have to say that I am very much impressed by the toolkit, template, and fact sheet. Really impressed. Today, I will not talk how and why important the child right to nationality is, because all are set in these toolkit and fact sheets in a concrete and easy to read way. Rather, I'd like to talk how useful the toolkit, template, and fact sheet I found. Let me start with the fact sheet. I was struck by the analysis of the recommendations by the committee on the issue of the right to nationality for recent 10 years. While the committee has always emphasized the fundamental importance of this right, the analysis clearly shows the still existing gap in our work, I mean the committee's recommendations, and present important 4 key takeaways. Takeaways are actually concrete recommendations for civil society organizations and other stakeholders, but also for the committee on how to fill the gap. Consistency is key, and language matters. These are very important and powerful messages to the committee. I will share those takeaway messages with my committee colleagues. As the Institute on Statelessness and Inclusion created comprehensive database, I hope that Institute will continue to analyze the trend of the committee's recommendations over time to monitor gap and improvement, which I expect to see thanks to the active use of this toolkit. Second, this is related to the 4th key takeaway point in the fact sheet. Teamwork makes the dream work. International human rights monitoring mechanisms, such as the Committee on the Rights of the Child, are most effective when collaborating among themselves and with civil society. This is very true. We all know that whether the committee can make effective recommendations relies on the quality inputs from the civil society organizations, and the toolkit is exactly for this purpose. But I'd like to add 2 points. In particular, the contribution of the civil society with expertise on the specific theme, like the Institute on Statelessness and Inclusion, is particularly important because they can analyze the committee's recommendations as is presented by the fact sheet. And I'd like to highly commend the contribution of the Institute to helping the broader civil society organizations and actors to effectively engage with the committee and provide relevant and quality information to the committee using the toolkit and template. Sometimes I have observed that expert organizations, in particular the international organizations, makes submission to the committee country by country, which is equally useful for the committee's dialogue with the states. However, I appreciate the approach of the Institute to develop toolkit and template to help civil society organizations at national level, because it is very important to involve civil society organizations and other actors in the international human rights mechanisms, as it will strengthen the follow-up process for the implementation of the recommendations of the committee at the national level. The ownership of this process by the actors at the national level is critically important. Finally, I'd like to emphasize how the template is helpful for the committee. During the session, the committee members have a lot of documents we need to read. And this kind of template is so helpful because we know how it is structured and it goes to the point and very clear and very distinct. So I really appreciate this work by the Institute and together with the UNICEF. Thank you very much. I very much look forward to the presentation of the toolkit today and have Q&A and participate in the Q&A session later on. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Otani, for your encouraging words. Just also to reiterate that Ms. Otani will remain with us for the duration of the session. And so if there are particular questions that you may wish to direct to the chair of the committee, you'll have the opportunity to do so at the end of all of the presentations when we open the Q&A segment. So if you have questions during the presentations for any of our presenters, please pop them in the chat function together with your name and country where you are working, and we will try to address as many questions as possible. Now, without further ado, I'd like to invite our first presenter, Ms. Vera, our Education and Program Officer at ISI, to present to you the toolkit.
Thank you very much, Denisa. Please let me know if you can see my screen. I think it's working. So thank you, Ms. Otani, for the encouraging remarks. This was a huge part of the kids' teamwork, and it's really nice to be appreciated from a member of the committee. And welcome everyone to this event where we are proudly launching our toolkit for child rights actors in order to engage on the child's right to nationality and childhood statelessness and the work of the Committee on the Rights of the Child. We've developed this toolkit in collaboration with UNICEF, and we based it on extensive experience that ISI has on previous engagement with the committee on the topic of the child's right to nationality and childhood statelessness, trying to raise its visibility with over 20 country-specific reports, and also providing briefings on the topic and co-organizing with the committee a symposium on the child's right to identity in emergency settings, along with a fellow NGO chief. So today we are launching this toolkit. It's meant to guide NGOs and UN agencies and enhance their engagement with the committee on these issues. We provide practical guidance on engaging with the committee, a checklist in order to orient users towards gaps in their legal frameworks that can give rise to childhood statelessness, as well as a template and a guidance note to facilitate drafting submissions. We are also pleased to launch the fact sheet as an additional resource which illustrates increased engagement around the child's right to nationality and protection of stateless children by the committee, and with guidance on how it can support further advocacy in this area. On the overview of my presentation, I will flip a little bit the sequence and focus first on the fact sheet in order to highlight things that Ms. Mikiko Otani already highlighted through the fact sheet, then move on to the toolkit, the template and guidance, and then our database in order to showcase how these resources are interrelated and can be utilized in order to enhance your efficiency and impact when engaging with the committee on the child's right to nationality and childhood statelessness. So imagine that you are an NGO working in the field and want to raise the child's right to nationality and childhood statelessness in your particular context. You can open up our fact sheet and see an overview of how the committee has engaged on the topic from 2010 till 2020, the amount of recommendations that it has made, the topics that it has touched upon, and then dive in the main themes that are contained in these recommendations, like the access of stateless children born on territory to the country's nationality, how it treats foundlings, and some prior engagement of the committee with the issue of birth registration and so on, as well as how the child's right to nationality is indeed a cross-cutting issue, which is something that is demonstrated throughout the work of other treaty bodies and the UPR. So through the fact sheet, you can have the key takeaways of the committee's engagement with the issue, the main themes that it has touched upon, and how the child's right to nationality is cross-cutting in order to reinforce also your arguments and your engagement with the committee. After you have an overview of how the committee has engaged with the topic, you move over to the toolkit. The toolkit is comprised by 6 sections that guide you on how to engage with the Committee on the Rights of the Child on these issues. It provides an overview of the reporting stages of the committee, a checklist and a template to aid in drafting submissions regarding the reporting work and overview work that the committee is doing, as well as details of how you can engage with our statelessness and human rights database that contains recommendations issued by a number of UN bodies on nationality and statelessness issues. If you go into the toolkit, you will see the human rights obligations in relation to the child's right to nationality. So the Convention on the Rights of the Child standards, other core UN treaties, regional conventions that focus on this topic, because the way the UN system works, and especially treaty bodies work, is really interrelated. The normative development of the standard within a treaty body might influence the normative development of the standard in another treaty body or another UN process. I would encourage you to take a good look at these standards and see how you can utilize them when engaging with the CRC to reinforce your argumentation. In the next section of the toolkit, you can see the key themes when it comes to reporting to the committee. It's really closely connected to the fact sheet, because on the fact sheet you see how the committee has engaged with these issues. In the toolkit, you can see a bit more of like the normative standards, some definitions, so that you know what these issues are about, and you will see that they are really close, more or less the same with what I referred to also in the fact sheet. Then we focus on implementing measures, which is actually a really big part of engaging with the committee and other treaty bodies when it comes to monitoring how the states uphold the right to nationality and address statelessness, because they are urging the state to take action and to reform legislation or do data collection or accede to international instruments that are related with the right to nationality and addressing statelessness. You will see a lot of these examples in the toolkit, and you can get inspired from them in order to enhance your argumentation and the way that you engage with the committee on these issues. Then we provide a checklist for identifying issues relating to the child's right to nationality. So imagine, and this, I think it can get a little bit broader than engaging with the committee, but it's also equally important. The checklist allows you to check what's happening in your particular context in terms of safeguards when it comes to the right to nationality and statelessness, legal and practical gaps that may exist, discrimination in your laws when it comes to nationality, how deprivation of nationality is regulated, how birth registration is regulated, how you can identify stateless populations, and then some standards on the child's right to nationality. So you can utilize this checklist to develop your focused content in your submission to the CRC committee. The next part is actually a part where one of the NGOs that we're working very closely with, Child Rights Connect, which is working very closely with the committee, has aided us to develop, and also we refer to their website in the toolkit. These are the reporting stages of the committee that highlight when you as an NGO, a CSO, have the opportunity to engage with the committee. Of course, you can find multiple more resources and detailed guidance on this from Child Rights Connect. So I will urge you, because I am just giving you an overview of the toolkit, to go into the toolkit, see these explanations, but really follow Child Rights Connect resources, because they have done an amazing work in unpacking the way the process works. Then we offer you a template and a guidance note in order to really develop your thematic submission on the relevant articles that touch upon the child's right to nationality and childhood statelessness, that's 7 and 8. A template where it's structured, it can show you how you can structure your own submission, giving, for example, an overview of statelessness in your country, the issues of concern specifically that you want to focus on, and some suggested questions that you want to raise to the committee and recommendations that you want to make so that the committee raises them to the state. Of course, this is indicative. You can utilize it as an inspiration, but at least in the way of how we have engaged so far, it has proven quite effective. And then the guidance note shares a little bit of examples of previous recommendations on the right to nationality by the CRC, some questions for the interactive dialogue or the list of issues prior to reporting that have been raised. And you can, again, I mentioned that you can unpack these steps and what these parts mean through the toolkit, but mainly through Child Rights Connect, and then some guidance on specific issues and how to unpack them in your submission and the recommendations. And then the last step is the ISI database on statelessness and human rights. It gives an overview of the recommendations that have been produced by UN bodies on the right to nationality and statelessness. You can utilize it to break down recommendations by UN body, geographical location, theme, year of publication, and so on. So imagine, for example, that you want to make a submission on the child's right to nationality in the Netherlands. You click on the UN body and the geographical location, and you can see how the issue has been touched upon by the committee. Or you want to get inspired and you want to touch upon a theme and you don't know exactly how to formulate it or how the CRC has engaged with it. So you can utilize, again, the database, go into the Committee on the Rights of the Child, choose, for example, children born on territory to see how the CRC has responded to access to nationality for children born on territory as a theme. Then you can break it even further down by country and so on. And this can help you see the standards set by the CRC and how you can also formulate these issues within your submission. So with this presentation, and I'm going to wrap up now, I try to showcase how you can utilize a set of 4 tools: the fact sheet, the toolkit, the template with its accompanying guidance, and the database, in order to make your submissions, but not only your submissions, the way that you engage with the committee on the child's right to nationality more effective. And of course, we have a list of further resources that you can utilize in order to learn more about the issue. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Vera, so much for your really comprehensive and thorough overview. Just again, if anyone has questions for Vera, please feel free to pop them into the chat and we will address them a little bit later on. I would now like to invite Jenna Almushahidi, the founder of SOAS, Swedish Organization Against Statelessness, and she will talk to you a little bit about her organization's experience and how they've been engaging the committee. Jenna's bio as well will be in this chat function for your further use. Jenna, over to you.
Thank you so much, Janisha, and thank you so much for inviting me also to this webinar to talk to you about how we've been engaging with the committee, but also how we, as a small organization, because the Swedish Organization Against Statelessness is a very small organization and we don't have a lot of resources. So we're a completely volunteer-based organization that is located mainly in Stockholm, but also a little bit all over Sweden. And we're completely volunteer-based and work very closely with stateless persons themselves. So having been able to work together with ISI and sort of receive a structure and sort of a template on how to report to the committee has really helped us raise the issue of childhood statelessness in Sweden. It has been a little bit difficult for us to engage directly with the government on the issue. Not having a lot of resources can really do that to you, where you know it's difficult to find a meeting time or for them to prioritize the issue. So having been able to sort of engage through media has been our sort of main point of contact so far with the government, which has been very indirectly addressing the government in various ways. So having been able to sort of report on this issue and submitting a report has really been great, because the government not only has the pressure from us in media, but also from the committee, and the committee's engagement with the issue, and the government has also sort of helped us gain momentum to show the importance of the issue. And the issues now further up on the agenda is still a very new government. So we will see sort of what they what they will do with this issue, and where it will take us. But the resources that ISI has been able to provide us with for this has really been invaluable, and also the committee's engagement on the issue, and sort of pressuring the government to answer these questions that we've had about certain the new regulations and laws that we have, but also sort of how do we see the future of the stateless children, and also especially unknown nationality, which is a very large part of the group. And also when we discuss this with the stateless children that we are working with directly, it makes them feel seen and heard by the committee, and which has also been so important, which shows that a toolkit like this can really help civil society organizations and NGOs to engage, despite being very small and having little resources. But also, I think it's very important to make that connection also, that the children themselves feel heard and feel like the issue is being brought forward. So hopefully this toolkit will continue bringing that dialogue, and will help not only the Swedish Organization Against Statelessness, but also others to be able to do the same thing and engage with the committee in an easier manner, but also indirectly than with their governments. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jenna, for your contribution. And I think there is really something to be said about the fact that, like, you're working in a small organization, but how just combining different strategies together with engaging the committee could really have an impact, as you were talking about engaging with media as well, to kind of give force or propel momentum around the committee's recommendations. So thank you very much for that. Now I would like to invite Tandeka Chowke from Lawyers for Human Rights. And speaking of combining strategies, she will talk to you about her organization's engagement and how as well they have combined that with strategic litigation to impact change. And so over to you, Tandeka.
Thank you, Danisha. I hope I'm not frozen. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. So Lawyers for Human Rights runs a stateless project that provides direct legal assistance to people who are affected by statelessness, as well as strategic litigation, where we're trying to use the courts as a platform to drive positive change in law and policy. And then we also engage in quite a lot of research and advocacy on the issue of statelessness, not only in South Africa, but also in Southern Africa. And in terms of our engagements with the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child, we have also found a valuable partnership with ISI in terms of the ISI being able to support us with capacity to engage the CRC and to help us to navigate the reporting processes. It is very much an underutilized mechanism, especially in South Africa. So it's very useful to have a toolkit that can make it easier for civil society organizations, activists, and stateless people themselves to be able to engage with the CRC. And three practical examples I can give of how this work has helped to enhance our advocacy or awareness raising on statelessness is, for example, in our litigation efforts, where we have used recommendations or concluding observations coming from the UNCRC to motivate for particular changes in the laws or adoption of particular regulations pertaining to children who are stateless, born in South Africa, and children who are foundlings. In another context, we've also been able to use the recommendations in our parliamentary advocacy when we are engaging with the lawmakers and policymakers to demonstrate to them where the gaps in the laws exist in South Africa. And also because in South Africa, international law is binding, the CRC is a valuable mechanism in that it provides that interpretive value to some of South Africa's international obligations in terms of, for example, the African Charter on the Rights and Welfare of the Child, as well as the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And then a third way in which we have used our engagements or outcomes from our engagements with the CRC is around training the media. So in our engagements with journalists, in our capacity building workshops with journalists, we also use the recommendations as an advocacy tool that they can incorporate in their human rights reporting, particularly when they are reporting on issues related to statelessness, so that they can also motivate or call for accountability from government when it comes to the eradication of statelessness and improved protection of the rights of children who are stateless in South Africa. So I'd just like to congratulate the ISI on being able to launch this tool. We are very excited about it, and we are also looking forward to using it in our capacity building. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Thandeka. That was really interesting. And I think, again, just to sort of reiterate, it is so interesting to hear how organizations find creative ways to work with the recommendations that are issued by the committee through different strategies on the ground. I would like to now switch gears and maybe shift a little bit to take stock from a global vantage point to have a discussion about some of the developments that have occurred to address childhood statelessness since the launch of the Coalition to End Childhood Statelessness. So as you may be aware, this coalition, a joint coalition between UNICEF and UNHCR, has a few aims, including to ensure that no child is born stateless, to ensure that national laws and practices that deny children nationality based on discriminatory grounds are removed from national provisions, to remove gender discrimination from nationality laws, to improve birth registration as a way to prevent statelessness, and also to encourage states to accede to the UN statelessness conventions. To that end, I am happy to invite Monica Sandvik, Senior Statelessness Coordinator and Head of the Statelessness Section at UNHCR, who will provide a snapshot and update us on the progress of the coalition. Over to you, Monica.
Thank you so much, Denisha, for that. Indeed, I'm speaking a little bit on behalf of the coalition today, on the coalition of every child's right to a nationality, which Denisha just shared with us in terms of the objectives of the coalition. I think, the positive thing about working on prevention and reduction of statelessness is that we are talking about an issue that can be solved. And when we speak about addressing childhood statelessness, when we are successful with this, we would be able to eradicate statelessness in a generation, or let's say in 2 generations. So it is quite a motivating area to working. In terms of some of the achievements that have been made on this, and I think it is very clear that this is an all society approach that is required. So these are not UNHCR successes. These are successes by us as a collective, where we all play a role, the Committee on the Rights of the Child, civil society organizations, global organizations like ISI, and also the UN system like UNHCR as the mandated organization to work on statelessness, and then organizations, specialized agencies like UNICEF that have a specific focus on the protection and rights of children. So for UNHCR, one of the action areas as part of our global action plan to end statelessness is around ending childhood statelessness. And since the launch of the campaign, which kind of coincides a little bit with the coalition, which came a little bit later, we've seen the 13 states that have introduced one or more safeguards in their nationality laws to prevent childhood statelessness. And we've seen about 3 states remove gender discrimination in nationality laws, which has prevented women from passing on their nationality to children. I mean, I think when it comes to addressing gender discrimination in nationality laws, we are not, I think the progress has been quite slow. We are down to 24 states that are still not allowing this to happen. I think those who have worked in this field for many years know that maybe some of the easier cases have been addressed earlier, whereas some of those that are remaining could be where we are looking at constitutional reform or several legislative pieces that need to be addressed, or then countries where there are still kind of very strong gender discrimination, not just when it comes to nationality laws, but also otherwise. So I think what we've seen also is that, and we count as a success, that we see that among the political pledges that have been made in UNHCR's high-level segments and global refugee fora, which is kind of pledging machinery, if you wish, where we've seen more than or close to 300 pledges on statelessness, and many of these have also been around childhood statelessness. But as I said, you know, all of this really requires an all-of-society approach, and I was really encouraged to hear from Tandeka and Jenna about how this toolkit that you have launched together with UNICEF, or that we are launching today, has been really useful in your work. I think what we see is that many of the I mean, right to nationality and statelessness is a little bit of a niche issue. So many of the civil society organizations that work are maybe have a broader mandate. They might have a more kind of a child rights focus, or focus on access to education or some other area, but they see that children's lack of nationality is really impacting on their work. And therefore they also feel that it's important for them to advocate on the rights of children to have a nationality. And I think in particularly for those civil society organizations, this tool will be really helpful. And I was really, again, encouraged to hear that, and I can see that this tool is not just about you know, working with and supporting the process of reporting under the CRC, but also really useful as an advocacy and analysis tool at the national level, like Jenna was talking about, in terms of discussing this with the government of Sweden in her case. So I think a really big congratulations to ISI and UNICEF for taking this initiative, for this really kind of simple tool. And I actually love the fact that it's about 11 pages, if I'm not mistaken. I think we have many tools that are very comprehensive and long, and maybe are not so user-friendly because of that. So I don't think this is really inviting to be used and applied. So I think that's really a great contribution to the work that we collectively do. UNHCR is also engaged in developing and launching a global alliance to end statelessness. And as part of one of the activities foreseen for the alliance is a knowledge hub. And I think it's tools like this that we like this toolkit that we would really like to see on the website of the alliance once the knowledge hub is up and launched, because it's practical tools like this that I think will be really useful for stakeholders globally, regionally, and at the country level. So very pleased to be here and to learn about the tool and see it hot off the press, and wish you a lot of success in rolling it out. And then finally, just an acknowledgement to the Committee on the Rights of the Child and Madame Otani, who is here, in terms of the invaluable work that you do for advocating for children's right to nationality. And I'm also struck again by the analysis done by ISI in terms of, you know, I think close to 200 recommendations right around statelessness and children's right to nationality. So it's such an important contribution to the work that we do. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Monica. That was really inspirational to hear the work that has been happening, the progress under the coalition, and also related to plans and developments for the Global Alliance. I just want to maybe open the floor for questions. I don't know whether there are any burning questions. I'm just checking my function to see whether I have questions from the audience. Okay, so the first question is for Mikiko Otani. You mentioned how useful it is for the CRC committee to have access to an analysis of its own engagement on statelessness issues, and hope that this is monitoring of recommendations will continue. You hope that this monitoring of recommendations will continue. Do you think that more can be done to support the UN treaty body system on this issue? Is there scope for collaboration amongst the treaty bodies on a cross-cutting issue like this? Very good question.
Thank you for the question. Yes, very good questions. And so first of all, just to clarify what I meant is that because the analysis presented in the fact sheet is for 2010 to 2020. So I'm very much interested in continuing receiving such analysis after 2020, and particular after the launch of this toolkit, because we all hope that the toolkit will have an impact on the volume and quality of the information we will receive, which will, we hope, result in the stronger and effective recommendations by the committee. So that's one. And but in response to the question about cross-cutting, analysis of other, treaty bodies, I think it would be very interesting if you look at the analysis of other treaty bodies, recommendations, and how the treaty bodies' recommendations are used, among the treaty bodies, for example, and how the increase in the treaty bodies' recommendation on this issue will lead to increase and highlighting this issue in the UPR, for example. Another analysis, if you can do, I really want to see is, because the right to nationality is such an enabling right and cross-cutting issue or overarching the fundamental right. So if you can analyze further to look at the recommendation of the committee, not only under the section of Article 7.8 under the civil right and freedom, but how the nationality issue is also raised and included in the recommendations on other parts. Sometimes we do under the migrant children's issues, for example, or access to education or health. So that kind of cross-cutting among the rights under the convention and country review would be also very, very helpful. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Mikiko, for your comments, and I think you raised a very good points. And also just to mention that ISI has recently published an analysis on UPR recommendations related exactly to that. And I think you're absolutely right that the more that this issue is referenced in different ways with different treaty bodies, it also helps to bring that visibility. And we will continue, of course, working on these various types of analyses. I am going to now ask a question that is directed to Vera. Thank you, Vera, for an excellent briefing on the toolkit. My question is, we know that statelessness is not related to a specific nation. It crosses borders. So does the toolkit also cover the statelessness issues and cross-border issues, and how to address this and lobby with the CRC committee? For example, the Rohingya crisis in Myanmar and Bangladesh and others. And this question comes from Victor Kuranan, international consultant on child's rights and statelessness based in Bangkok.
Yeah, thank you very much, Denise, and thank you for posing this question. I think indeed the nexus between forced migration and the right to nationality of the child and or childhood statelessness is a really pertinent issue, and we have seen it in multiple contexts. I think from the way that we have engaged with the committee's engagement on the topic and other also UN bodies, that this nexus is not always picked up on. There are recommendations by the committee on this nexus, and even if there is no clear mention of the nexus between forced migration and the child's right to nationality, there are recommendations on the Rohingya, for example, from the CRC. So I think you hit a spot there, Victor, if I'm correct with the name, that this issue, although it has been touched upon, the clear connections between the issues and how forced migration actually can cause or be the consequence of statelessness is not always clear in the way multiple bodies, not only UN bodies, engage with the topic. In the toolkit, you will find as a subcategory that forced migration comes up, but not direct information on how to engage on that particular issue. But we believe, and I personally believe, that the way the toolkit has been structured, it allows you to engage on this topic and lobby, as well as with other topics that have to do with the child's right to nationality and childhood statelessness. So it's an all-encompassing toolkit that focuses on the main topic of the child's right to nationality, and then you can utilize it to raise awareness for multiple sub-issues like this nexus that you referred to, and maybe start a dialogue with the committee and with other bodies on how to highlight this relationship a bit clearer, because I repeat that we see recommendations from the committee on this topic, but sometimes this particular connection is what we're missing, and I think it should be raised more specifically in order to get also more concrete responses from the states that are reviewed. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your response, Vera. We have a question for Monica from UNHCR. And the individual would like to know what activities does what does the Alliance, what kind of activities would their work entail, and how would it be different from the I Belong campaign? And maybe also just to expand on that a little bit, if you could also talk about the opportunities that the new Alliance might bring for work on the child's right to nationality, and also how the Alliance is seeing possibly like the participation of stateless children.
Oh, thanks. That's a great question. So the Alliance, let's say 4 of the key areas of work that we've foreseen. I mean, I think first it's important to stress that it is an alliance of civil society organizations, member states, regional organizations, stateless-led organizations, UN agencies, academics. So it's really kind of a broad multi-stakeholder alliance. And one of the key areas of work is a solution seekers program, as it's called. This is a program where states who have submitted a pledge, who have an active pledge, can volunteer to be part of the solution seeker program, which is kind of a champion state concept to be role models and take more of a leading role in addressing statelessness. We are also foreseeing to have regional network labs, which is really, I mean, really regional webinars where we are engaging with regional NGO networks and intergovernmental organizations that exist at the regional level share practices between them, and to really look at more kind of context-sensitive solutions to statelessness in those regions. So kind of really engaging regional actors. Another area of work is also an online marketplace, which is kind of a way of consolidating project proposals or pitches from a group of Alliance members. And we hope that this will attract also kind of donor interest in order to kind of take this further with the organizations that have pitched. This is not fundraising for UNHCR. I mean, UNHCR will act as a secretariat for this alliance, but it is making this space available for organizations to pitch their ideas. There will be a knowledge hub that I actually mentioned already, which includes, for example, an interactive global map that shows you a little bit the status data on statelessness and some analysis around that, where we could also have a library of tools such as the ISI tool that we've familiarized ourselves with today. And then I think importantly also the thematic working group. So the question about where would childhood statelessness come in, I think that's where we would see the childhood statelessness come in and actually have an expression of UNICEF, already an expression of interest to lead that thematic working group. And there is still now a question in terms of, the coalition on every child's right to nationality. Will that kind of become, start operating under the Alliance as one of the thematic working groups? And that's kind of a discussion that is still ongoing. But in brief, that's what the Alliance is about.
Great. Thank you so much, Monica. I would like to maybe pose a question to Thandeka and also to Jenna, because they both mentioned how they have been using the recommendations from the committee to engage with media. And specifically in the case of South Africa, we've heard how LHR has taken steps to actually train the media. And I just wanted to maybe ask whether you both could say a few words on how that sort of engagement with the media or training with the media has been received, and where you see, have you faced challenges, or has that led to really positive developments in their actual reporting on the issues?
Should I start? Yes.
Yeah, maybe you can start.
Yeah, so when it comes to the media, there's been like from time to time, there will be sort of the issue of statelessness that comes up, and there has also been a few parliamentarians that once in a while will question the government in terms of statelessness. So whenever that sort of happens, we sort of see that there's an upswing in the reporting on the issue. But a lot of the media don't know the difference between statelessness and being undocumented, because in Swedish, the words are really similar. So that's been a bit of a, so that's been a kind of a hinder for us, where we have to sort of back up and sort of explain the different terms. But whenever we have received great coverage on the issue, but often very short, very brief. It's been difficult to sort of really deep dive into the issue. But we have seen that also being able to, me working as a writer, also have been able to sort of write longer pieces on this. And we have seen that the issue sort of through that have been able to sort of make the connection through the committee, like, and the recommendations and the questions that have been made to the government and the decisions that are being made, especially the TD agreement, which is the basis on the whole government coalition is based on this agreement. And sort of we can sort of analyze that through the statelessness lens and childhood statelessness, and sort of report on it ourselves, kind of. But we have seen that the media is interested. It's just that there's a lack of knowledge. Once they know, they're very shocked, and they want to cover it more. But it's usually local media mostly that they've been in contact with a stateless person, actually. Yeah.
Thanks, Tena. That's really, it's promising to hear in any event that at least you're able to share information and to educate them and bring awareness to the issue. Tenzeka, would you like to say maybe in 2 minutes or so what your experience has been?
Yeah, so it has been pretty much the same in South Africa. We have conducted training on a domestic level, so in South Africa, and then last year we also did a regional training for journalists across Southern Africa. And you know, a big portion of the training is dealing with the myths and misconceptions and the terminology, and being able to differentiate and not conflate issues of refugees and migrants with issues of statelessness. But we also found in relation specifically to, you know, treaty bodies' recommendations, their use is in solutions journalism, because the journalists say, okay, fine, we understand there is this problem, but how do we address it? You know, so they kind of, the recommendations are useful in just amplifying what has already been said out there. And then the journalists can come up with more context-specific recommendations based on the countries or the communities in which they work. So it's sort of like a guidance document for them as well.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that. And I think we don't have to underestimate how important it is to really dispel those myths, and also how to really drive home the recommendations that are issued in respect to local situations. Okay. I am going to wrap up because we have 5 more minutes left on the call. But I would just like to thank all of our panelists and presenters for being here. I think this has been a really engaging and informative webinar. And I think I speak for everyone when I say that I hope you've also found it informative. I have a couple of announcements that I would like to make just before we leave. The resources that we launched today are, and we've shared the links, I think, already in the chat function, but they will also be available on our website shortly. And if you haven't done so already, when you visit our website, please feel free to sign up for our monthly bulletin. Also, just to say, our annual course on statelessness is currently open. Registration is open until the 1st of May. This year's course will run over 8 weeks, and it will start on the 19th of September, ending on the 7th of November, and it will all be virtual. And so you can find more information on our website, but I think as well the link has been shared in the chat function. And then finally, the second World Conference on Statelessness will be taking place between the 26th and 29th of February in Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. The theme for this year's conference is Solidarity, Knowledge, and Change. And we have put out a call for proposals, and the deadline for that is the 26th of June. So again, please visit our website where you could find more information. I'd just like to close out by thanking again all of our presenters for their contributions, and of course a special thank you to Ms. Otani for taking the time out of her busy schedule to join us today and remain for the full duration of the webinar. I would also like to thank UNICEF, who have supported the development of these tools, and of course also a special thank you to Child's Rights Connect for their support in helping to publicize this webinar today on our behalf. So thank you very much to everyone for joining, and I wish you all a good afternoon.